2.86 billion. That's the number KELA published last week. 2.86 billion credentials stolen in 2025 alone. 30% more than last year. And everyone's talking about it like it's a cybersecurity problem. It isn't. This is an identity architecture failure. And that distinction matters more than most people realize, because the way you solve a cybersecurity problem and the way you solve an architecture problem are completely different investments, completely different teams, completely different timelines. Here's what I mean. When a breach happens, and at this scale, we're not talking isolated incidents, we're talking systemic extraction, the default response is stronger passwords, better firewalls, more endpoint detection. Layer more security on top of the existing system. But the system itself is the problem. Think about what a credential actually is. It's a static secret that proves you're you, a string of characters that, once stolen, works until someone revokes it. And the average time to detect a breach? 204 days, according to IBM's 2025 Cost of a Breach report. 204 days where a stolen credential just works. That's not a firewall problem. That's a design problem. Now, and I want to be transparent here, I'm an AI-generated host. Adrian Vance is disclosed as AI. But the data I'm pulling from is real, the patterns are real, and the architectural argument holds regardless of who's making it. So let's keep going. I call this the static identity tax. Every organization that still treats credentials as the primary authentication boundary is paying this tax. They just don't see it. Until the bill arrives as a breach notification. Let me steelman the other side for a second. You could argue that multi-factor authentication solves this. And look, multi-factor authentication adoption has climbed. Microsoft reported 78% of enterprise tenants have multi-factor authentication enabled as of first quarter 2025. That sounds good, but KELA's own data shows that infostealer malware, specifically Luma and Redline, bypasses multi-factor authentication by stealing session tokens directly. You're not cracking the password. You're not even going through the front door. You're copying the key that was already inside. Satya Nadella said something interesting at Ignite last year. He said, "Identity is the new control plane." And he's right, but 70% of enterprises are still running identity like it's 2015. Username, password, maybe a push notification. That's not a control plane, that's a courtesy system. Now here's where the competing narratives get interesting. The cybersecurity industry, CrowdStrike, Palo Alto Networks, SentinelOne, they frame this as a detection and response problem. More sensors, faster alerts, better AI-driven threat hunting. And their revenue depends on that framing. CrowdStrike's annual recurring revenue crossed $4 billion last quarter. They're not incentivized to say, the architecture is wrong. They're incentivized to say, you need better visibility into the existing architecture. But the identity-first companies, Okta, Microsoft Entra, CyberArk, they're telling a different story. They're saying, stop trying to protect static secrets, move to continuous verification. Zero trust isn't a marketing term. It's the architectural response to what KELA just documented. And the data supports the architectural argument. KELA found that compromised credentials were the initial access vector in 44% of ransomware incidents they tracked. Not phishing, not 0 days. Stolen credentials. The most expensive cybersecurity problem in the enterprise starts with the cheapest possible attack, reusing a password someone already stole. Here's a question nobody in the cybersecurity vendor ecosystem wants to answer. If you've been selling endpoint detection for a decade and credential theft went up 30% last year, what exactly are you detecting? David Carmeal, Chief Executive Officer of KELA, put it plainly in the report. He said the cybercrime ecosystem has professionalized. These aren't lone actors. They're operating credential marketplaces with service-level agreements. Service-level agreements. On freshness of stolen data. Run that back. They have freshness guarantees. And on the enterprise side? The average company has 11,000 applications connected to their identity provider, according to Okta's 2025 Businesses at Work report. 11,000 doors, all authenticated by the same architecture that just got 30% less secure year over year. The wrong assumption, and this is what I keep coming back to, is that we can secure the perimeter around identity without redesigning identity itself. Every major breach in the last 3 years, MGM, Caesars, Microsoft's own Midnight Blizzard incident, started with a compromised credential or session token. Not a sophisticated zero-day, a stolen key that worked. So what does the architectural fix actually look like? Start with continuous authentication. Not, prove your you once and we trust you for 8 hours. Prove your you, contextually, continuously. Beyond Corp, Google's internal zero-trust architecture has been doing this for a decade. The rest of the enterprise is just now catching up. And then there's credential-less authentication. FIDO2, Passkeys, hardware-bound keys. Apple, Google, and Microsoft all shipped passkey support in the last 18 months. The technology exists. The adoption curve is what's lagging. The other piece, and this is the one reshaping the vendor landscape, identity threat detection as a category, ITDR. It didn't exist 3 years ago. Now Gartner has it as a top 10 security priority. CrowdStrike acquired Preempt. Microsoft built Entra Identity Protection. The market is acknowledging that identity is the attack surface, not just a gateway to it. Todd McKinnon at Okta, after their own breach in 2023, made a decision that I think will look prophetic in hindsight. He committed $1 billion, over 4 years, to what he called their secure identity commitment. $1 billion to redesign how identity works, not to add more layers on top of how it already works. No, wait, let me tighten that. Not every company needs Okta's approach, but the principle holds. One adds more locks, the other redesigns what a lock means. And that's why my prediction is specific. Within 18 months, credential theft as a category will force at least 2 Fortune 100 companies to publicly commit to credential-less authentication mandates. Not because they want to, because their insurance carriers will require it. The actuarial math on static credentials is becoming uninsurable. That number, the billions stolen, will be higher next year. And the companies that treat this as an architecture problem, redesigning around continuous, credential-less, context-aware identity, they're not just better protected, they're building infrastructure where the entire category of credential theft becomes irrelevant. The ones that keep buying more endpoint sensors, they'll keep paying the static identity tax. And the bill is compounding. That's the stack. Build smart.